No GPS, no rules, no shame. Just a funky little quad in a soul train frame. Move it low, we fly that flow. Move it low, grab that gap. No time to nap, no time to nap. Hit that roll, funk and control. Funk and control, bounce that wall. Bounce that all, we fly it all. Funk it all, we fly it all. Funky and free, we fly indoors, we fly with glee. Whoop it, loop it, groove it, move it, bounce it, flip it, funk it, rip it, fly that soul, don't lose control. Tiny whoop love gonna make you whole. I thread the needle through the vinyl stacks, bounce off the mirror ball, never looking back. My quad's got soul, it's got style, it's got sass. It dips through the incense like a blast from the past. I'm flying figure eights through the lava lamp glow, dodging house plants like a funky pro. My whoops got rhythm, my sticks got heat. I'm the pilot of the party with the grooviest beat. I loop through the hallway, I dive by the broom. I'm the disco ghost in your living room. I hit that split that's over grandma's chair. She just claps and says, boy, you got flair. I'm flying freestyle with a velvet touch. My quad so smooth it don't need a clutch. From the shag rug to the ceiling fan, I'm the funky little fly with a master plan. The curtains dancing on the breeze, freestyle funk in my living room with ease. Tiny whoop magic bumping every wall. I'm the James Brown of flight, can't stop at all.
Welcome, friends! I forgot to zoom the camera in again. My name's Aaron Ciotti. Everybody calls me Ciotti. Welcome to the show. That's looking good. Welcome to Freak Out Friday. I don't know. Welcome to Friday Q&A. I've got 10, at least, probably more than 10 soldering tips for you. Because I have a bunch of soldering to do. I have 4 builds worth of newbie drone parts. And they're just sitting around. And so I'm going to build them. And then I'll throw them up in the Etsy store and see if anybody wants them. What you were just watching is the 2S 1.6 inch prop build with the Tiny Whoop 0802 19,000s, which is actually for sale. It's a Mobula 7 V3 frame, BT 3.0, perfectly going through the frame like that, which is just amazing. Like I said, 802 19,000s, Gemfan 1610s. Why can't I think of the pitch on these props all of a sudden? They're 1610s, right? Yeah, wow, that's weird. Gemfan 1610s, HGLRC Spectre AIO 2S. That flight footage was when it was on the a Runcam Nano 3 camera. Now it's on a Caddx Ant, old school Mobula 6 canopy, one of my custom blue ORT Micro Vs, and custom tune, all that jazz. Yeah, ready to rock on BT 3.0 2S. Loads of power, very lightweight, great for juking and jiving in and out of you know, your garden or any other super tight little spots. So yeah, message me. CiottiFPV.com has all my contact info. Discord and Instagram are the best way to get a hold of me. Message me. I haven't even figured out what it'll cost yet, but whatever all those parts that I just listed added together with a little bit extra for the build time and tuning time and all that jazz. Is what that'll be. At around 11 o'clock, if I don't forget, and or if you guys remind me, we're going to do a giveaway. Goggle strap, lanyard, Newbie Drone Lava V2 580, and then 2 680s, and Micro King Home of the Whooper sticker. Same as the fourth giveaway that I do every first Monday of the month. $5 a ticket to cover the shipping. Last one of these giveaways that we did, only one person entered. I can't pay to send stuff to you guys, so it's $5 a ticket. You can get as many tickets as you want. That way it covers shipping. If more than one person enters, then it covers me doing this as a full-time job, which is extremely difficult and kind of sketchy, if I'm honest. Last year was a good year. I had health insurance for the first time in a while when it was still affordable. Unfortunately, because of, absolute insanity here in Cheeseburger sad land, prices tripled, and I just can't really afford it. So this year I gotta be a little careful this year. No going up on ladders or doing anything sketchy. But yeah, hopefully next year something will change. Caillou Mini showed up. Christian Earnshaw, thank you so much. I don't see you in the chat yet. I hope he comes at some point here, because everybody wants to know what this TPU is, and I have no idea. I've never seen TPU in like this eggplant purple color before. But yeah, Christian Earnshaw built one of these, and he's been having a blast with it. And I think he might have had an extra, and he sent this over. So yeah, very, very cool. This build, I think on Sunday's live stream, we're going to compare the Caillou Mini to the Baby Turtle Bando 2.5 to the V7 2.5, which will be really fun. And then, yeah, these are going to get built. I think I'm going to do 2 out of 3 of these. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to do this. But, yeah, these are getting built, along with the Max M2 frame. Max is actually sending me an AIO as well, in addition to the motors. So the Max frame, which is a 2-inch build, is going to get set up with these 1202.5 motors. And then so we can compare the Max frame to the 2-inch Baby Turtles that I've got that are already built up. And then I think I'm going to pull one of these apart. I think I'm going to pull this analog one apart and drop it into the 2.5-inch frame to get me started there. I'm pretty sure this Baby Turtle is going to stay together, though. This is the one with the 04 light on it, and it's just so goddamn good. So I think this one's going to stay together. The all-up weight that these are at with a 300 mAh 2S battery, it's just perfect for this prop size. These 2.5-inch builds, they need to be heavier. They can't be this light. The Caillou Mini is, I can already tell you that this is a significantly heavier frame than the Baby Turtle, which usually my thought process is you run the lightest weight frame that you can that's still durable, and then if it's too light, you put a bigger battery on it. With these little guys, the top plates are so small that it's hard to fit a bigger battery on there. So a 2S 450 is about as big as you can get. And so maybe the Caillou Mini is more durable than the Baby Turtle. I don't know. I won't know until I start bashing them. Maybe the fact that this is a little bit heavier is going to be a plus, because I don't like CiottiFPV chat. We can see you typing. I guess you can't see chat. That's annoying. Yeah, you never know. But they seem to be all really, really good frames. I don't think you can go wrong with any of these. The baby turtles are designed by Sub 250G FPV. You can look him up on Instagram as Sub 250G FPV. He also has pages for Sub 100G FPV. And you can get him from CNC Madness. But if you hit his Instagram page, he's got a link to it. And then the Caillou Mini tends to be harder to get. Pyrodrone is the only spot that you can get it here in the US, and it tends to go in and out of stock pretty quickly. So you're probably not going to be able to get your hands on this. So if you're desperate to do a 2.5-inch build, the baby turtle frames, from what I've heard from a bunch of people, are just excellent. But yeah, different strokes for different folks. What I will say is I'm incredibly impressed with the product page on the Caillou Mini website for this. There's like a tutorial guide that breaks down all kinds of cool stuff, different motor options, different prop options. Really, really impressive. But yeah, that's what we're going to be taking a look at on Sunday, I believe, because Caillou is a company over in Europe, and Sunday is like kind of the European time slot, 3 o'clock Eastern time here, which is God only knows what time over there. So yeah, that should be really fun. Again, I'm hoping that that Kristen Earnshaw pops in at some point either today or Sunday to let us know what this what this TPU is, because I've just gotten hammered on Instagram with people asking me. Huge shout out to him for sending me that and a bunch of 3D printed stuff. It's really, really cool. So yeah, lots of fun open prop stuff kind of going on. 2 of these 4 builds that I'm going to be working on tonight, I'm probably not going to get these all done, but I'm going to get a bunch of soldering done on these. 2 of these 4 are going to be open prop builds on the 2 Newbie Drone Mosquito frames. This is the smaller Mosquito frame. This clears... I think they designed this for 1.6-inch props, but it looks like you can pretty easily put a 1.8-inch prop on here. And then this is the Mosquito XL, which is designed for 2.5-inch props. So 2 of these guys are going to be open props, which will kind of be fun. And then I'll fly them probably over the weekend, get them tuned up, and get them onto the Etsy store probably like next week. So if you would like one of these Newbie Drone builds, you're going to have to wait a little bit. But yeah, they'll be up there. The reason why I've decided to do this is way back in the day, I did a couple of builds called TinyLifters. This was back in the days of the Insta360 Go being the only half decent way to get HD footage on a Tiny Whoop. And it was really tough to... It was... The Insta360 Go 1 was 19 grams. And it was just too heavy to pick up with a 1S build. Luckily, these Newbie Drone AIOs, the BLV3, the BLV2, the BLV3, and now the BLV5, they all accept... They're kind of designed for 1S, but they had 12 amp FETs, and they could take 2S voltage. And so I embarked on a very difficult path to figure out how to get, how to build a 2S 1.6-inch prop Tiny Whoop that would carry a 19-gram payload, basically, up on top of the canopy. Newbie Drone made this really cool TPU holder for the Insta360 Go, and after a lot of work, I got it set up, and then the Insta360 Go 2 came out, which was 26 grams. Luckily, this had enough power to pick that up. The reason that I nicknamed those TinyLifters is that they flew like a lifter, in that, like, they didn't fly very good. Having the camera all the way up top of the canopy like that made the center of gravity really, really high, which keeps the props and the ducts out of view, which is why I did it. But Yeah, it was a cinematic build. Like back then, lifters were brand new and lifters flew pretty awful. But they flew, right? And it was like amazing that we could pick up a medium format camera at all. Uh, and this is pretty similar, right? To have like a 1.6-inch prop setup that could lift the 26-gram camera was pretty wild. And so the TinyLifter did. I brought it to a few gigs. I would fly it around for fun. I would fly it around like to kind of test the RF in the spots that I was at. The quality coming out of the Insta360 Go 2 was not quite good enough to like actually use or deliver to any client, but it was super fun. And I built two of them because I wanted to have a backup and I wanted to be able to test motors between the two, and I got them about as good as they could. Then the DJI 03 came out, and now the DJI 04, and the Insta360 Go 2. It's, you know, the 04 Lite even is better quality than the Insta360 Go 2. And with the Insta360, like, it's a whole separate camera. It's, you know, it's not built in to the actual like quad itself. You got to hang it off the top, like it could fall off. It's a whole big thing. And so I haven't flown the TinyLifters in forever. For whatever reason, I was digging around and I came across a bunch of these. So I have a bunch of these BLV2 and 3s. As Newbie Drone has sent them to me for testing over the years. I've hung on to them for in case the TinyLifters ever blew up and I needed replacements. And so I'm digging around and I realized I had all these. This Mosquito had been floating around. This had motors on it. I pulled the motors off to put onto something else. This thing's been kicking around. And I just really, and then the other thing that made me think about this, well, the reason I was digging around actually is like 2 weeks ago when we were doing that, the motor plug testing. We tested JST 1.25 motor plugs versus JST 1.0 motor plugs. And now the other day we tested JST 1.5 motor plugs versus direct soldered. When we did that testing of the small Newbie Drone specific JST 1.0 motor plugs a couple weeks ago, we found that it really did make a big difference. The smaller plugs were not up to the task. And so that got me thinking, because all of these Newbie Drone builds, I've been using the little plugs. And so I'd gotten all this stuff out, and then I realized, like, I had a whole bunch of sets of these motors, and, like, these will be great for somebody to just throw around their yard. And so what we're going to do tonight is direct solder all of these motors. One of the problems with all of these Newbie Drone builds has been they didn't make much power, and they were not very efficient. And a big part of that problem has been these little plugs. What's been great, though, about the Newbie Drone Acro-B BLV, whatever, 235 boards, is that they've had great big solder pads on them above the little JST 1.0 plugs. And so we're going to direct solder all these motors. I'm going to get 4 of these things built. And then, the other thing, they're going to go on Etsy. The other thing is, yes, these work on 2S, but when I dug all this stuff out, and just like out of curiosity, I started flying a couple of the TinyLifters around without the cameras on them, I realized that even without the camera on it, it didn't fly all that good. And I spent way too much time trying to figure this out. In the end, what I figured out is that for whatever reason, these boards don't like 2S. What ended up tipping me off is that when you go into the motors tab and you try to just spin the motors up ever so slightly on 2S, they like crank up. Like most of the time in the motors tab, if you just use the up arrow, if you highlight one of the motor sliders and you use the up arrow to go 1/10%, 0.2%, 0.3%, 0.4% up the scale, you can get it to like 2% where the motors stop stuttering and they start actually spinning. And motors will spin very slow. It does depend on the kV of the motor and the ESC, but usually you can get the motors to spin really, really, really slow. These Acro B boards, for whatever reason, when you do that, when they stop stuttering, they spin like fast. There's something about these Acro B boards where, like, yes, they work on 2S, but something ain't right when they're on 2S. They're totally fine on 1S, but on 2S, there's just something going on there. So I'm moving these all back to 1S because they work totally fine on 1S. I've actually got a bunch of motors here that work completely, that will work on 1S. I've got a couple of, I've got an 802 27,000. I've got a set of 802 25,000s. I've got a set of 1102 19,000s. These are going on the 2.5-inch toothpick rig. And then I've got a set of 802 19,000s, which are going to go on this little guy. And so, yeah, I'm going to build these 4 things. None of them, they're not going to be fire-breathing monsters. These are going to be like cruise-around rigs. These are going to be like get somebody hooked on FPV rigs, right? And yeah, it's insane for these just to be sitting here collecting dust. They need to be out in the world, you know, being sent to their death. If you want a build to just send out into Never Never Land, right? Like these are great for that, like a one-way whoop kind of setup. But yeah, I want to see these things get used. It's just silly to have 4 working AIOs, 4 working sets of motors. I'm down 1 frame. I'm gonna do a Cockroach 75 frame on one of them. I got to figure out the 4th frame for these. It might be another one of these. I think I have another one of these floating around. But I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to get all 4 of these done tonight. I'm going to get a bunch of the soldering done on them because I need to direct solder 4 sets of motors. And so I figured that would be a great time, even though we've done this before, to give you guys at least 10 different soldering tips that are going to drastically improve the quality of your solder joints and just generally, like, your confidence in being able to solder cleanly without, like, it being such a chore that is kind of a nightmare. So that's the plan for tonight, my friends. As always, this is a Q&A live stream. Ask any questions that you've got in the chat. Make sure you type at CiottiFPV so that I'll actually read it. Speaking of the chat, Eco4458 was first. FizzPV was next. Dylan Moe, Mick Shaky, Jeremy Flies FPV, Uriel, CCAD Ryan, Frank Nicholas, FizzPV, Tanky, Sleepy CBR again, Newborn, DCDK, Dagul, Break Faded, Jeremy Flies FPV again, Green Thumb, Frank Nicholas, Tanky, Level Up, FizzPV. I'm going to leave it there. If you want the gangly to say your name, tag me, say something interesting. Or just get to the stream early and say hello. Uriel says, check mail. I think that's correct. I shall. Eco says, I've gotten a 75mm whoop recently, but I don't know what props are best besides Gemfan 1610 buys. Any recommendations personally? Eco, there is very rarely a best. There's always different, but there's very rarely like a best. There might be a best for you specifically, but I don't know you yet, right? Like, one of the things that's linked on my website is my Fiverr page. On my Fiverr page, I have a couple of gigs. You can basically hire me for one-on-one consulting. I can help you fly better. I can help you learn to PID tune. I can help you solder better one-on-one. Or I have what's called build planning on there. A half an hour build planning session with me, or an hour, consists of me asking like 20 plus questions in order to figure out what the best prop, motor, voltage, video system, frame is going to be for you. Like, this is why there's not a best, right? There's just different. Somebody that flies in a big spot, but they never crash, but they don't want a lot of power, but they want a lot of efficiency, is going to have a totally different propeller there's going to be a totally different propeller versus somebody that flies at bandos, doesn't care about runtime, just wants durability, right? And so there's never a best. If you ask this question that you just asked me on Facebook or Reddit, there's going to be 80 people that don't know shit about shit that are going to tell you what the best prop is. What they're telling you is what their favorite prop is. That does you no good. You're a different human being than them. You fly differently. You've been flying a different period of time, right? It does you no good. So be careful of that. Be careful of people that when you ask that question, they just say, oh, GemFan 1610. GemFan 1610 is a great propeller. It's one of my personal favorites because it's incredibly durable. HQ has a couple of ultralight props, ultralight 1.6 inch props that are really good as well. They have a bi-blade. They even have a tri-blade. Those are really good. They're not nearly as durable, but they're lighter weight. Between those three propellers, those are like three of the best for most people. You could be in a scenario where you have a really low KV motor and you need like a 4-blade prop. I don't know. But my personal three favorite props are those. Propellers are so cheap that you might as well kind of just get all three of those and see if you like them. If you get all three of those and you don't like them, you've learned a lot. Hopefully at that point, you know that you don't like bi-blades or you don't like tri-blades and you maybe need a quad blade. But yeah, that's the best that I can do. That's the best answer that I can give you to that question. Jeremy Flies FPV says, was that the Where is Matt dance? That was the, that was the dance of, my brain is not being a complete asshole today, basically. If you're new around here, I have mental health issues. I've lived with pretty severe anxiety and even more severe depression my entire life. And it certainly doesn't get better living in this goddamn hellhole. But I digress. Break Faded. What's up, dude? Tanky says, soldering tips, just what I need. Pulled the pad off an LED strip, soldering too thick and stiff wires to the LED strip, building LED race gates. They look awesome. Nice. LED race gates are very, very fun. Typically, pulling a pad means that you have dumped too much heat into it, and or you've used something like a solder sucker on it. Tip number one. Here we go. Just because there was a question about it. Tip number one. The pad, the copper pad, is glued underneath the pad to the PCB or the PDB, whatever it is, to the board. So you've got pad, and then you've got glue, and then you've got the actual board. If you lift a pad, you pulled the pad off of the glue. You will pretty much never lift a pad if that glue isn't hot. If the glue is at room temperature, or just not at the tip of the soldering iron temperature, the glue is like hardened, and it's working really well. When you get those pads hot, that's when the glue starts to get gooey and it gets weaker. And then all that's holding that pad on is the copper, and the copper is very, very thin. Okay. So normally when a pad rips off, either the pad is really hot and the glue is starting to get not so gluey, not so sticky, or you've just put a ton of force on that pad, excuse me. Typically though, it needs to be an upward force. If this is a wire and this is the pad, if you've got the wire soldered like this and the direction of any force that could potentially be applied is outwards like this, think about like trying to rip a piece of paper, right? If you just take a piece of paper like this and you just pull straight outwards, it's going to take a hell of a lot of force to rip it. Whereas if you take a piece of paper like this and you go like that, it's very easy to rip it. Okay? The pads are the same way. If you've got a pad and then you've got a wire up like this, or you've got like a big ugly blob of solder on the wire, and then it gets pulled, it's going to peel that pad right off. And so you want to get your wire as flat down to the pad as possible. And you also want to try to like orient your wires so that if they get pulled straight outwards. They don't get pulled upwards, because that's how you peel that pad right off. Cool? So that's the way that the pads kind of work. This is why through holes are magic. A through hole is literally a hole drilled in the PCB with the pad material all around it. You're never going to wreck a through hole. You might rip a wire and rip the individual strands of the wire, but the through hole is going to live forever. You can't lift a through hole. And so if you can ever use through holes, in my opinion, you should, because they're just so goddamn strong. Pads, there's always the risk of lifting a pad. Sometimes on the outside of the board, there'll be a little castellation. It's like a little copper pocket. That castellation is like copper plated, basically, through all of the layers. And so those castellations are going to be really strong as well. It's the pads that are very weak. The other thing I want to let you know is a solder sucker, which is like a big pump with a little nozzle on it. When you pull the plunger back on that solder sucker and you hit the button, when that plunger moves, the solder sucker is going to come down and hit the pad. If you're dumping a bunch of heat into that pad, the glue is gooey, and then you're dropping something down against that copper pad. That's a great way to loosen that glue up or move the glue around. It's not good for it. This is tip number 2. Don't use solder suckers that have a hard nozzle. There are solder suckers that have a silicone nozzle. In my opinion, and my father's, who taught me to solder, who literally went to a NASA soldering school for an entire week when he was working at Princeton Plasma Physics Lab on a tokamak fusion reactor, nuclear fusion reactor. Use John Wick. This is solder wick. It's got a little bit of flux powder inside of it. You put this down where you want to get solder out. You put the tip of the soldering iron on top of this, and it will wick, thus the name, it'll wick the solder up into this copper braid. Solder wick is excellent stuff. It does have a little bit of a learning curve. My favorite thing to do is to put this down in the pad. You take a little bit of flux paste. You put a little blob of flux paste on top of this. You take the tip of your soldering iron. You tin the tip of the soldering iron, which means you just pick up a tiny little bit of solder, just the tiniest little bit, so that the tip of the soldering iron is not totally dry. You just touch it to your solder so that you have a little bit of a tinned solder tip. And then when you drop that liquid solder tip down on top of the flux paste, on top of the wick, it's going to transfer the heat really quick, and you're going to be amazed at how quickly it pulls almost all of that solder up off of that pad or through hole or whatever you're trying to get solder off of. So that is one of the safest ways to remove solder, is with solder wick. You can get solder wick on eBay for like practically nothing. It's an essential tool. So they got 2 tips already, and I'm just reading through chat. Break Faded says Emacs has a great 2.5 frame with the TinyHawk 3, only 2S but a ripper. Yeah, Emacs sent me the TinyHawk 3 ages ago. The frame's okay. I don't like that they did like the double arm design, but yeah, the frame holds up really well. It's a little heavy, it's a little big. When they do the double arm thing, it blocks a little bit more thrust than you really need to. One single arm tends to be a better bet. It's why pretty much everybody that, every frame that you see is just using a single arm design. But yeah, the TinyHawk 3 is alright. 3 is alright. BMF Spade says, got my AMAX 1103 11,000 kV motors today for my Caillou mini fixing to soldering them up. Very cool. Uplift says, I just built a 1S baby Nazgul with Beta FPV 802 23,000s using brand new batteries. After I take off, the voltage sags and goes to dead within 10 seconds of flight. Any ideas? Oh man, that could be so many different things. Check the mechanical system first. Make sure there's not like vibrations. Try different batteries. Check the filters. I've got like nothing to go off of. I don't know if it's oscillating. I don't know if the motors are getting hot. I don't know what batteries you're using. I don't know what the all-up weight is, right? Like it's incredibly difficult to troubleshoot stuff over the internet. It pretty much always needs to be like a one-on-one conversation so that I can ask a ton of questions. But there's a bunch of things that you can check. Give those a shot. Danny says, please let me know the price of the tiny whoop you just started with. I actually don't know. I haven't totaled it up, but I went through the list of the parts. All my contact info is on CiottiFPV.com. Message me, and yeah, we'll figure it out. CMYK says, yo, dude, not sure if it's just me, but the stream is stuttering randomly. Because Kevin Sumner got me onto Social Stream, I've not had stuttering issues in a couple of weeks, thank God. What it's probably is that you've had YouTube up for a while, and YouTube has a horrible memory leak problem. They have forever. That's why the stream well, it only started struggling when I switched over to the Mac Mini a year and a half ago, I guess, because it doesn't have as much memory as my old giant tower did. But yeah, the stream is running properly now. I have 0 dropped frames, so quit out of just close your YouTube window. That'll kill the memory leak, and then reopen it and it'll start memory leaking again. Landhammer Flies with a $10 super chat. Thank you, dude. He says, thank you for the continuous download of information of becoming a Whoop lover thanks to this channel. Very cool, man. Thank you for supporting me so that I can. All of you that watch, that click the thumbs up, that subscribe, that tell a friend, that make a funny short and put it onto Best of CiottiFPV over on my Discord channel. Those of you that are patrons, everybody that does anything, use my affiliate links, buy a t-shirt. Speaking of, shirt of the day is from We Bleed. You're all responsible for this, for better or worse. It's been a hell of a ride. Let's keep it going. Frank, we got that. Robert Cyrus says, looking for that tiny whoop you started the show with. Same comment as a minute ago. Hey, Ryan says, what's the battery move with the Cockroach 75 CF? What's the battery move? I'm assuming that you mean like what's the move? Like what should I do? Pretty much any of these 450-ish rectangular batteries will slide right in there. That's what I do to save weight. But you can also print little 3D printed things that you can then screw into the bottom here. But then you're adding 4 screws and a bunch of TPU. Yeah, I just slide them right in there, and they're totally fine. That's what I've always done. This doesn't go over there. This goes over here because we're putting it into a little giveaway in a minute. Got about 20 minutes before we do that. See if I can get caught up on chat and get some work done before we do it. Yura says, yes, make money from things lying around in time. There are updates and you want better. Douglas 6 says, have you been watching the Olympic drone footage? I've heard good things. I don't have a way of watching the Olympics, but I've been... so most of the flying is being done by Shaggy FPV, who is the pilot for the company DDG, Dutch Drone Gods. Shaggy is one of the OG dudes that I've been following for the last decade, basically. He was one of the original, was it DCL? What was the original one? I think the original Drone Racing League, DRL, sorry, DRL. He was one of the original DRL pilots back in the Paul Nurkula days, and man, yeah, before all these young kids. And so, and I'm, I've been following him and all the other OGs, and we've all been sharing a lot of the stuff. So I've gotten to see a lot of it just on Instagram, just from all the OG guys sharing stuff back and forth and messaging each other. It's wild, man. They're absolutely killing it. I'll be honest, I'm shocked that they're flying non-guarded stuff. I'm assuming that wherever the Olympics are being held, I don't even know where they're being held this year, somewhere in Europe. I'm assuming that they must not have the same laws as us, because they're flying, non-prop guarded stuff. And so that was a little shocking. It makes sense though, the how fast they're able to go. Here in the US, we can't do that. So the live broadcast work that I do is typically chasing cyclists, who go between 20 and 40 miles an hour. And one of the things that I've always struggled with is having something that's sub 250, as quiet as possible. The quiet thing is really funny because they're getting hammered. Holy shit. The amount of hate that they're getting for the sound that the drones make is really disappointing. But what's funny is, like, I've had to deal with that same thing at every single live broadcast gig I've done. Like, I've been grounded. I've been told to land before because it was too loud. When I did an event it was the last UCI BMX event that fed into the Olympics 2 years ago for the Summer Olympics. So yeah, it's been very difficult to find stuff to build live broadcast setups that have enough runtime, that can carry enough speed, that are safe, right, for the US rules. I'm very jealous that they're flying non-prop guarded stuff, because if I could have done that, it would have made my life so much easier. Moving forward this year, I'm going to be moving all of my live broadcast gear over to 04, and I'm changing a bunch of things up. One of the reasons that I've been kind of all over these rigs that'll carry the little 04 lights is that I am going to be using these. These are just so small, right? This is like 50 grams all up. It's maybe a little bit more than that, but these are so small and these are so fun. And I can always find a path where I'm like just not constantly flying over people, but transiting, right? Like the FAA's rules there's all kinds of stuff written about, like, sustained flights over people versus transiting over people. And so one of the cool things that's going to happen with these guys is that I'm going to bring them with me to the live broadcast events this year. I actually just yesterday got locked in for Tulsa Tough this year, which is a 3-day event, which is absolutely mega. I did that one last year. That is really, really, really good news. And so, yeah, that's going to be really fun this year to have these little guys that I can screw around with. And I've even got like the 04 light on the little 65 millimeter 1S build. I can fly that through the, they always love when I fly through the TV truck. They have these big giant tractor trailer TV trucks that have satellites and big ass antennas and shit. And they have, 30 camera inputs, and there's a big, it's a full production. It's full blown, TV production, broadcast stuff. They love when I fly through the truck. I usually do it with a full size Cinewhoop, and then I just give them the GoPro footage. It's going to be hysterical this year to be able to fly through that truck and like do power loops and shit, because I'll have a little 2S whoop, and then the little 1S 65 millimeter whoop. So this is going to be really fun using 04 this year. I'm super excited for that. But yeah, the Olympic drone footage is pretty next level, man. Shaggy is a phenomenal pilot, really nice guy too. Alatop says, "What's your opinion on VCI Spark 0802 25,000 kV motors?" I haven't run those in particular, but 802 25,000s are good for 1S 1.6 inch prop builds. They're good. They're not great. If you have a set of 0802 25,000s, by all means, use them on a 1.6 inch prop build. If you're looking to buy a set of motors, don't buy those. Buy the GEP-RC 1002 25,000s. Those are way better. They are ridiculously good. They're arguably the best 1S 1.6 inch prop motor. And so, yeah, 802 is kind of in between. If you really want something that's as lightweight as possible, cool. But in that case, one of the other builds that's actually for sale that's sitting in here, this is a 1S 1.6 inch prop build with the tree toppers. These are 802 33,500 kV motors. These are a much better option for that. And so 802 25,000s are, they're in this like weird area where they don't have quite enough kV for an 802. But if you have a set floating around, they're fun. You can do a build and have a good time with it. But the 1002 25,000 kV, since it's a 1002, it's got a lot more grunt and it can really spin the prop up to a much higher RPM. An 802, it doesn't have as much grunt. What the tree toppers do is they're wound for a higher RPM, 32,500. And so they take advantage of that, of the fact that they're wound for that higher RPM to offset the fact that they're not grunty enough. And so you end up with a motor that still doesn't make as much power as the Gep RC 1002 25,000s, but it gets a lot closer than an 802 25,000 will. You can kind of cheat a little bit by winding a motor for a higher kV. When you wind a motor to be a higher kV, you're winding it to have less resistance. And so it's a little bit of a hack to do that. It's a little bit of like a cheat. You can't do it too far though. Like if these tree toppers were wound to be like 38,000 kV instead of 32,000 or 33,500. What are they? No, they're 32,500. If they were wound any higher than 32,500, they would start to get too hot. There's a limit. Like you can push the envelope a little bit and you can wind a motor a little bit beyond, but then you got to be really careful because if you go too far, it starts to become really inefficient. So yeah, there you go. Landhammer, thank you again for the super chat. Banshee says, broke my first canopy and scratched my, oh my god, scratched my cornea from contacts in the same day. Oh, I thought you did it with your drone. Jesus. My drone is my spirit animal. No question, just wanted to share. I thought you hit yourself in the eye and broke the canopy on your eye. Jesus. Sorry to hear that, brother. CCAD Ryan says, I just finished migrating to KS. Might start building the 1S walk snail build in the hotel. Nice. Levster says, just got the new 702 RCN Power 31,800, and they are crazy good. I get very good fly time and power. I hope you'll test them in the future. I will. I'm not going to like run out and buy them, but at some point I'll figure out a way to get my hands on a set and give them a shot. There's so many really good motors that like, it's not like there was a time where we didn't have really many, if any, good 702s, and so like every new set that came out, I was all over it. Nowadays, there's like a half a dozen 0702s that are just brilliant. So it's we've been the past like 3 or 4 years, we've had massive gains in these 702s. Now we're gonna just get like little incremental gains. So yeah, Tanky says it was a 5-meter flexible LED strip or a piece of that with really fragile soldering pads. Kind of knew it would go wrong. Learning experience. Yeah, I didn't even pick up on that. Those LED strips are horrible, dude. I've actually lifted pads twice doing the LED strips that are giving this really cool little purple glow back here. What I ended up learning is that I super carefully solder my wires to them, and then I take E6000 and I put a massive blob of E6000 all the way up the wires and then all the way down the LED strip, so that the E6000, and then then I flipped them over and I put another blob on the bottom between the wires and the strip, so that the E6000 would really firm that up. Yeah, those pads on those LED strips are an absolute joke. Uplift says, no worries. It's a general question. It's all stock. All I did was change motors. Same stock battery, same PIDs, same props as it recommends, but thanks. Try looking at logs. So if you had a rig that was working fine, and then you changed just one thing, which is kind of what it sounds like, there it is. Like, don't overthink it. Don't blame like the filters. Blame that one thing that you changed and just zero in on that. So it sounds like you changed motors. So were they brand new motors? Even if they were brand new motors, not all motors are balanced all that well. And so they could be out of balance. If they're not brand new, they could have bent motor shafts and they could be out of balance from that. So yeah, if you make a change, or if you plow into a tree, or if you're screwing around with Betaflight and all of a sudden the build is, went from like fine to not fine, you got to like stop yourself from going bananas on like the PID tuning to try to fix it, and just be like, hold on, I made this change, or this thing happened and now it's different. Let's just totally like laser focus on that thing. And so yeah, it's really tempting to just like, oh, I can fix it with PIDs, or I can do a black box log, or I can fix it with filters. And a lot of times you'll be chasing your tail. Look at the thing that changed, look at the thing that happened really closely, and just think about that, right? You hammered it into a tree at full throttle, and all of a sudden it's flying away. Don't fix that with the PIDs. The tree didn't change the PIDs. The tree bent the motor shafts or the propellers. Fix the motor shafts, fix the propellers, right? So take a step back and just try to focus in on that one thing. I am as guilty of that as anybody. It's taken me a long time to kind of figure that out. And like, whenever I have a problem, just like stop myself and be like, all right, when did this start? Like, because wherever that problem started, this is actually like the best troubleshooting step, is just to like, when something's going wrong, just like stop yourself and be like, hang on. PID tuning is not the solution here. Unless when it started is when you were PID tuning, right? So take that approach, and like if you change something, so like what I'll do, right? Like if I change to a set of motors and all of a sudden it's flying away or whatever, I'll go back to the previous set of motors, and that'll isolate that it is the new set of motors. And so now I can take that new set of motors and be like, all right, what the hell is going on here? Is one of the motors shorted? Is there did I put the screws in too far and the screws are going into the windings, right? That could be a problem. That could totally be your problem. Yeah, it really helps to have that sort of focus on the thing that's caused the problem. Because there's about 80 things that could be wrong. BMF Spade says, have you heard anything about some 1.5 millimeter shaft, 1.2 inch props from any company? If you go on Weebleed, a couple of the 1.2 inch props now have a 1.5 millimeter shaft option that's grayed out. It's not in stock yet, but hopefully they'll come in stock because that's new. Fracticless says, if you want to watch the Olympics, get with me. Definitely non-guarded quads in Italy. It's in Italy? Okay. I don't have time, to be honest. But I appreciate it, Frank. And plus, I've been seeing everything that I want to see, to be honest, on Instagram. Tanky says, I chase riders on a motocross track and do it with a Synologue 35 with 04. It can be done, but not with a GoPro on it, and it isn't a real ducted whoop, of course. Subject-driven flying is my favorite, man. Replicator says, you think the tree toppers benefit from 12 amp or 5 amp? 12 amp for sure. 12 amp for sure. Easy button here with 12 amp versus 5 amp. 5 amp is only really enough for 1.2 inch and 1.4 inch builds. As soon as you hit 1.6 inch propellers, you want a 12 amp FET. The 5 amp FETs will run, but you won't get full power on any of the motors that you're going to typically put on a 1.6 inch prop setup. Also, the 1.6 inch props are more draggy, and they're going to make the motors work harder. So as soon as you hit 1.6 inch props, 12 amp FETs to get full power. If you're still stuck on 5 amp FETs, it'll just fly a little bit worse. FizzPV says, there's a specific silicone for these LED strip ends. It's a sign product. That does not surprise me. That's awesome. Aletop1GG says, I've already bought the 802 VCI motors, but they look fine. I'm waiting for the new Matrix 2 AIO. It's all to repair Air 75, trying to achieve Air 75 2 performance. Original Air 5-in-1 got fried because of a few bad motors. I have heard good things about the RC & Power 0802 25,000s. The Weebleed, Happy Model, and Tiny Whoop motors all have KVs that are like artificially high, and so those the RC & Power 25,000 kV 0802s are probably very similar. The 0702s, at least, it's a very similar situation where the number that they seem to be kind of underrated, and so even though the RC & Powers for sure, even though they say 25,000 kV, they perform like maybe 30,000 kV, or maybe 28,000 kV or 27. Weebleed, Tiny Whoop, Happy Model motors, these are 32,500. These perform like an RC & Power or VCI, like 30,000, 29,000, 28,000. So those VCIs might be good. I don't have any experience with them. I don't have any experience with the RC & Powers either. I try not to say the things like I'm saying right now about stuff that I haven't personally tested, but judging by the performance of the 0702 motors, which I've tested all of, that is the case. Happy Model, Tiny Whoop, Weebleed motors, 0702s, the KV number is overstated. RC & Power, VCI, Beta FPV, the KV numbers are understated. So those might be just as good as these tree toppers. I can't speak to it because I haven't personally run them. But yeah. LPV says, I pooped my socks. Most poop their pants, but I leveled up. There we go. Let's start soldering, friends. What am I give you guys 2 tips so far. Let's keep going. Tip number 3. Get you a set of these, goddammit. This is a tip that you don't even have to like get good to do. These are made by Yakdo Soon. This is just type into RC & Power head-mounted magnifier. Anything like that. You'll find these pretty easily. They come with a whole bunch of lenses. Use the thickest lens. This is a 3.5x magnifier. They're super comfortable. They do have a little light on them, but I never use the little light. These are absolutely essential, especially when you're working on tiny whoops. Even if you're not working on tiny whoops, when you're soldering up a VTX or a receiver, there's going to be 30 gauge wires, which are itty bitty. This is going to allow you to see what the hell you're doing. And when you can see what you're doing, the quality of your work is going to be way, way, way better. So this is a massive tip number 3, is to get some sort of a head-mounted magnifier. If that's too nerdy for you, come on, man. You're standing in a parking lot looking like Doc McFucking Brown Fly. Doc McFly. What's his fucking Doc? Just Doc. You can also get readers. If you just get readers from like CVS, they do have a little bit of magnification to them. And these are going to help as well. But this is it. Like, just get this. No, like, we all look like assholes anyway. Who cares if you look like even more of an asshole when you're soldering and working at the bench, right? This is so, so, so important. Frank Nicholas hit me with a giveaway reminder. Let's do it before I forget again. $5 a ticket. You can buy as many tickets as you want if you really want these batteries. CiottiFPV.com has a PayPal link. PayPal doesn't take any percentage. Or you can do a super chat. When you do a super chat, Google, YouTube takes 30%. If you don't want to support Google and YouTube, you can do the PayPal option. 580 mAh Lava V2. 2 680 mAh Lava V2s. This lanyard. This goggle strap. This sticker. Quick giveaway. You've got 2 minutes. And then I'll send some stuff out to one lucky winner. Wayne Hunter entered a little bit after I did the giveaway like 2 weeks ago, and I've left this tab open the whole time. So Wayne Hunter is already entered because he paid for a ticket a couple of weeks back. All right, let me get my email up for the folks that do PayPal. All right, cool. So we're on tip number 4. Tip number 4 is another thing that you can just buy. And it doesn't have to be this, but this is great. Some sort of an articulated arm that you can put exactly above your work, or just light. You have to have a properly lit workbench. And here's the deal. You can't have shadows. You can't have the lights coming from behind you. I don't have any lights up here, right? Like, here I am. I don't have any lights up there. Because if there were lights behind me, as soon as I hunched over to do the work, I would be creating my own shadow. You need lights that are either right above or in front of you, so that the light is coming in like this, and so that when you hunch over to do the work, you're not in shadow. This is like $20. This does come with a big glass lens in it that'll magnify a little bit. I actually don't like that glass lens. When you pull the glass lens out, unfortunately, it becomes too light and the springs lift it up. But that's totally fine for me because I have the down-facing camera here. And so I set it up like that as like a little ring light, and it just absolutely works perfect. But light is tip number 4. You have to have a well-lit workbench with lights coming in from a direction that you're not going to create your own shadow, so that, again, you can actually see what the hell you're doing. The little light on this guy, it does work, but it's not great. Having like a big light source like this, the problem with this is it's a tiny little light source. And so when you put your finger in the way, it's going to block the whole light and you're going to get a big shadow. This is a great big light source. So if you look here, the shadow is like very soft because it's a big light. I can't block this whole light, right? Like, it only becomes a sharp shadow when I get all the way down, and at that point it doesn't really matter. So you need like a big-ish light source. None of these little like single pin lights. A single little pin, here, I'll show you what I mean. A single pin light source like this guy on the Yocto Soon. As soon as I put, well, I gotta turn this off. Right, so I'm using this as my light, but like, look at that. Look at that awful shadow, right? And look how big that shadow is the whole time. And so like, you're creating your own shadow with your hands and your fingers and the tip of the soldering iron, versus a big light source. The shadow is really soft and it never becomes a sharp shadow until you're like absolutely down. This is why when you go to a photography studio, they don't have tiny little lights. They have giant light sources so that it's not a sharp shadow. So that on your face, instead of a really sharp shadow, you've got a soft, it just looks better. Take my word for it. Photography 101. Lighting 101, I should say. Use big light sources when you light people's faces. This light back here is a smaller light source, and you can see there's a sharper shadow. All right. Let's get this giveaway going. Sleepy CBR wants 2 tickets. You got it, my friend. Thank you for the support. Let's get this going. Here, you guys can check my work. Make sure I don't miss anybody. We got 2 for Sleepy CBR. Frank Nicholas with a $10. He's going on here twice. Thank you, Frank. Once, twice. Ryan Scott says 2, please. You got it, my friend. 1, 2. And Dylan Morgan. He's getting himself a ticket. He knows that you can't win if you don't play. All right, 30 more seconds, and we're going to really quickly do this, and I'll ship these out to somebody. Oof. The very next email is this family's AT&T bill. God. It's just so outrageous. It's just so ridiculous. God damn, dude. It's like $4,000 a year for fucking phones. Jesus Christ on a crutch. Oh, man. Something else entirely. Eco says, do you ship these giveaways to the UK? Unfortunately not. I have had no luck with shipping overseas. Basically, every single time I ship overseas, and I've done it many times in the last like 4 or 5 years I've been doing this, it's pretty much 50-50 whether or not it just vanishes. And like, it doesn't even come back. Like our like shipping in this country is not great as it is. But at least stuff will come back like a couple months later. When I ship overseas, it's just gone. And like I've lost $200+ quads to overseas shipping, and so there was a point where I just had to say no more. Like as much as I would love to, I can't. I can't. You know, I can't. 50-50 it's just not good enough. It's not good enough chances. B. Kirk with a $4.99 super chat. He says, "One, please." You got it. All right. I think we're good. Let's see who hath won. Alatop says, "I need some FPVs Not a Crime stickers, yet I can't find them in EU below $15. I mean, look, I know you guys have a hard time getting FPV stuff, but consider yourselves very lucky that you're not here right now. It ain't fucking good, man. It ain't looking good. God. I would kill to have trouble getting FPV stuff right now. Let me just say that. All right, let's see who wins. Thanks, everybody. Let's get these batteries into a home where they can be used. The goat, the new freshly batteried goat. Oh, I love them. Sleepy CBR is on the left. Ryan Scott's up on top there. I can't see who's behind the quad, but they just got blown away. It looks like it's Sleepy CBR. Congratulations, Alan. I'm pretty sure I've got your address over on Patreon. Congratulations, my friend. I've got I've got 3 more of those batteries. I've got all this same stuff to do one more of these giveaways next week, or maybe Sunday. Probably not Sunday, because I don't want to tantalize the Europeans any more than I already do, not being willing to ship over there. So it'll be like Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. Sleepy CBR. All right, good deal. Let me just throw these in here real quick. Do you have a Propodial? Sleepy CB. Wayne, I did. You were in there. If you rewind the stream, you'll see your name up on top. I'm sorry it took so long, but this is, I've forgotten to do these giveaways ever since. I've had the tab with your name on it for like 2 weeks now. But yeah, you were on there. Sleepy CBR, do you need a Propodial? I feel like I shipped you a Propodial with a you have one? Okay, cool. So you're good. For those of you that don't know, I put I ship out a Propodial with every time that I ship something. And so if you buy anything from my Etsy store, or if you win one of my giveaways, you get a free Propodial. This is a really slick way of removing tiny whoop props without wrecking your motors. So yeah. If you need a Propodial, buy something from my Etsy store, and you'll get one for free. All right. Soldering tip number 5 is to get what I call bone support going on. Bone support means that you get bone onto a surface. don't solder like this. If you solder like this, the muscles all the way up your arm, all the way into your shoulder are going to be what's stabilizing you. And you're going to move all around, right? So just like look at, I'm not going to do this on purpose, I swear. Right? I'm going to hold a fake soldering iron and look at the tip of the soldering iron. I'm going to hold this as steady as I can. See it moving all around? Here, I'll put it on the black thing of the goggles here. I swear to God, I'm not trying to move. That is as stable as I can hold it with my arm up in the air. Now watch. All I'm going to do is put this part of my wrist down on the desk. And I'm even going to do this in kind of like an uncomfortable way. See the difference? I'm still moving around a little bit because I'm flexed on my wrist here. Even better is that you rock this part of your hand down on the desk. And so now watch how steady this will become. I got to move these a little bit. And I got to rotate this a little bit. Watch how steady this becomes with the tip of this on the little black dot. See that? Still moving a little bit. But bone support, when you have, this is something that I kind of took from my long lost days of airsoft. When we would shoot at somebody 100 yards out, we would tuck anything that we possibly could in, or we would push up against the side of a tree. We would get something, some physical barrier connected as close to where we were holding the airsoft gun, so that we wouldn't have to have all the muscles in our entire body trying to stabilize. And so having any kind of bone support, even just locking this elbow down, our gear would usually have like a mag pouch here, and we could kind of lock into the mag pouch. It would make a huge difference. And so it's taking, think of it like a fulcrum, right? If you hover your arm up here, you've got this big long lever, right? And all these muscles have to work. You put your wrist down against the desk, and the lever becomes, what, 3 inches long? Cool. That's a big one. That makes a big difference, is using some sort of bone support. Sometimes I'll try to like roll my wrist all the way over onto the desk so that it's like this. If I want to get the soldering iron really flat, I'll roll my wrist all the way over like this. And then just get into a comfortable position where I can actually just let the tip of the soldering iron sit like that. And now you can be really steady with it. Right? Still going to move a little bit. But very, very, very steady way of holding the soldering iron. Tip number 6 or 7, I don't know where we're at. Get the soldering iron flat. Don't solder up like this. If you solder up like this, it's about heat transfer. If you're coming down like this, you're only going to transfer heat on the itty bitty little tip of the soldering iron. If you get it flattened out like this, you're going to transfer heat with the entire flat spot. Also, I really prefer the chisel tip, like the stock soldering iron tips that come with them. The tip is like this. And use that. Use the flat part of the tip, again, to transfer heat. You want the highest, the most amount of surface area. I'm actually going to turn the soldering iron on now. You want the most surface area between the wire and the tip as you possibly can, because you want to transfer the heat quickly, and then you want to get off of there. The other thing you can do to transfer heat even more quick is to tin the tip of the soldering iron. Tip number 7 or 8 or 6 or 8.5. It helps a lot to get the chisel tip flattened out and to not come down like this and to come down flat. This certainly helps, but if you look, even doing it like this, there's still a pretty small area of contact there. If you pick up a little bit of solder, you take your solder and you spool it up, you wrap it you wrap it around your screwdriver, wrap, and then you go a 90-degree angle, and you end up with this little thing. You put this down on your desk. You take the tip of the soldering iron, and you tin the tip of the soldering iron. You melt a little bit of this solder to that chisel tip. And so now, instead of the chisel tip being totally flat, it's a blob. And so you bring that blob of metal that's hot as hell down onto the wire, and it wraps around the wire, and it just dumps heat into the wire. That is one of the best ways to transfer heat. It definitely helps to get the tip of the soldering iron flat, but it also really helps to have the tip of the soldering iron tinned. You don't want to bring down too much solder. Just a little bit, just enough to have a little pocket on the tip of the iron. I'm just gonna start. I'm gonna start stripping and tinning motors because I have a bunch that I have to do. We're gonna do these first here. These are the 0802 25,000s. That's a big one. Tin the tip of the soldering iron. Also, the solder, the core of most solder. The core of most solder has a little bit of flux in it. It doesn't have quite enough flux, but it does have flux. So when you tin the tip of the soldering iron, you're going to see that smoke. The smoke is the flux burning off. DCDK, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, thanks for all that you do, Ciotti. Much appreciated, man. It's my pleasure. UConFPV says, you have any good portable iron recommendations? TS100 is just like a classic. It just works. But then there's also a Secure. The company Secure, SEQURE. They make really good portable soldering irons as well. The much like cameras, the best soldering iron is the one that you have when you need it. And so, even if you get one of like the $10 ones, just have it. Just throw one in your car, throw one in your bag. If you have it, you won't need it. If you don't have it, you'll need it. Joshua's FPV Know-It-All page has some really good soldering iron recommendations that I personally have referred to in the past. Tip number 8 or 9 or 10 or 11. When you strip your wires, this is going to be a two-parter. If you're stripping little tiny 30 gauge wires like this, there are usually only 8 strands inside of each one of these. So don't use anything metal to strip them unless you've stripped a couple thousand of these, which I have. If you have fingernails, use your fingernails. And now here's the other thing, right? Like, I'm going to use these flush cutters. If you do use flush cutters, only strip off exactly how much you want and then look at it. You should have your goggles on, your magnified goggles. Look down the barrel of the silicone that you removed to make sure that one of those 8 strands of wire is not in there. If you're going to use something metal to strip the wires, make sure you check some of those. But here's the deal. If I nicked one of these itty-bitty strands of wire, it's very weak now, and it could very easily break. So if you have fingernails, today I do, because I've been a little bit less anxious over the past few days, and I haven't eaten them off like a crazy person, just use your fingernails on these 30-gauge wires. Drive your fingernails into it, rock them back and forth a little bit to make sure that you're getting through there. Grip the wire really hard with your offhand and then pop that off. Your fingernails are not harder than the wire, so your fingernails will never accidentally cut or nick one of these inner strands of wire. Your fingernails are actually the safest way of stripping these little 30 gauge wires. With the heavier gauge wires, it's not as big of a deal because they'll have like 50, 60 strands of wire in there. But these itty bitty 30 gauge wires, especially like these motor wires, right? Like we're dying to get as much power as we possibly can into these motors. Don't reduce the throughput by 1/8. The other thing that I'll do when you pull away on this silicone insulation, it'll typically pull that silicone up a little bit. So what I do after I strip these is I just push it back down with my fingernail. So just really quickly, I'll push that silicone back down. This way I can strip off just barely the amount that I need. And that's really important for the next thing that well, not the very next thing, but at some point I'm going to show you how to solder these up to the PCB in a way that is as strong as possible. Here's a bonus when it comes to these little motors. These wires love to break right here at the PCB on the stator of the motor. This is going to take me absolutely forever to do, but I really like to do it. You get a little piece of shrink wrap that's just barely big enough to go over the PCB where these wires are soldered to, and you put that over it so that it protects it. This takes time. A lot of the manufacturers do this for you, which is just wonderful. Some of them do not. Apparently, Newbie Drone is one of the ones that don't do this for you. And because I'm selling these, I'm going to do this because it does make a difference. You want to pick the smallest shrink wrap possible that'll just barely fit over there, and that's this size right here. This is the exact right size. And so get a piece of it, and you're just going to chop it up into little bits here, about that long. I call this prepping the motors, and it really does make a difference. And so you chop a whole bunch of these. I'm just going to do 4 for right now. And then you slide it over. I guess this isn't really a soldering tip, but it's a bonus tip. It does make a difference on these motors. If your motors do not have this little bit of shrink wrap, add it. It makes a mega difference. And so you just push it over the PCB. You're going to have to kind of flatten it out. And come on, you bastard. There we go. All right, just work it down there. There we go. You got to make sure that it goes all the way over that little bit where the wires are. And so just keep pushing it forward. There we go. And then you're just going to hit it with a little bit of heat. What I like to do is hit it with heat lightly and then push it down one more time just to make sure that it doesn't slide up over that PCB. You want it to grab onto that PCB so that when you bump these wires, when you're pulling props off, you're not pushing on the wires, you're pushing on the shrink wrap. And so now it's all the way on there, and it looks like this. Come on, you jerk. I know you're set to autofocus. Well, let's do this. It always looks for flesh. You want it? Oh, it's black on black. It's hard to see it. But you've got a tiny whoop motor somewhere that has the little... There you go. You can kind of see it there. You've got a tiny whoop motor somewhere that's got that shrink wrap. It really makes a big difference. It'll keep these wires from breaking off the motor. Pain in the ass to do, for sure. A pain in the ass to do. But if you're cutting a connector off like this, this is the time to do it. Or if you're swapping the wires, or you're swapping to a different connector or something like that, take the opportunity to do it. It's well worth it. Because if you don't do that, the wires are going to break off, and you're going to have to redo this whole thing, and that's going to take way more time. So I've now got my wires stripped. The next incredibly important tip is to tin the... you're going to tin both the pad and the exposed wires. And the way that you do that, well, basically what you're doing here is you want to load up both surfaces that you're trying to connect with solder, so that you don't have to try to hold this thing in place and hold the soldering iron and magically have a third hand putting solder onto the joint. So whatever you've got that's going to be connected, you hold it with something. You take a quick look at it with your magnified goggles so that you can see the one little strand of wire that's going rogue, that's going to bridge to another one and blow up your board. Get all those wires packed neat and tidy. Separate them so you have a little bit of work, a little bit of room to move. And the trick is, because you've got individual strands of wire, you're going to bring the soldering iron from one side and you're going to push the solder in from the other side. What you're trying to do is literally push the solder in between all of the strands of wire so that the entire thing is covered. So I tin the tip of the iron, push the iron against the wire, and then push the solder in from the other side. And you'll see it'll become one big blob and then get it out of there. Soldering iron tip that's tinned on one side, push the solder in from the other, and then pull it off. Soldering iron on one side, push the solder in from the other side, get it out of there. That's all. The other thing that kind of happens there is that, like, you've got, imagine my head's the wire. You got your soldering iron, you got your tip of the soldering iron, and that's got a nice big blob of solder on it, right? You're going to put that into the wire, and since the wire is cold, the solder is not going to do anything. And so you got this ball of solder. When you push it into the wire, it's just going to indent, and the wire, there's going to be no, like, there's going to be no transfer. Then you take your solder in your other hand and you push it like this, and what you're basically going to do is push the wire into the tip of the soldering iron, but then it's going to melt, and then bleh, it all blobs together over the wire. And so you're doing two things with your offhand on the solder. You're literally pushing the wire into the tip of the soldering iron, but then it's going to melt. And again, the solder has flux in the core, so you're going to add a bunch of flux. This is the 9th or 10th tip, and another really important one, which is to use flux. This is a flux paste syringe. This is my absolute favorite. It's got a tiny little tip on it, so you can put this flux paste exactly where you want it. What the flux does is it keeps everything, it keeps everything clean, but it's also, it turns from paste into a liquid, and that liquid is going to transfer the heat really quickly, in the same way that you tin the tip of the soldering iron so that you don't just have this straight metal blade. You've got a blob of liquid here. And so the flux is going to transfer the heat really, really quickly, and it's going to keep everything nice and clean. If you use flux, you're going to get shiny solder joints. Shiny solder joints are good solder joints. It's not like the most important thing. It's more important for the solder joint to be smooth and rounded rather than like all craggy and awful looking. But a nice rounded solder joint that's also shiny is best case scenario. And flux is the key. I'm not using flux to tin these wires because there's plenty of flux in the core of this solder. If when you're doing the work, there are fumes that you can see, you have flux. Those fumes are the flux burning off. And so if while you're doing your work, you've got those fumes, you're good. You've got enough flux there. As soon as those fumes start to go away and when they're completely gone, you're raw dogging it. And that ain't good. Don't raw dog it. Get some more flux going. If I'm doing anything other than tinning wires, I'm using flux. And I'll show you in a minute what I mean when we start connecting these to some of the pads on this AIO. You're just going to put a nice big blob of flux on the pad itself. And then when you tin the pad, it'll go very quickly and it'll transfer heat really nice. The tip of the soldering iron starts to oxidize the second that you're done cleaning it. Tip number 10 or 11 or 12 is clean the tip of the soldering iron when you remove it from the stand, not when you put it back in the stand. You want to leave the tip of the soldering iron dirty because the solder prevents it from oxidizing. And so when you put the soldering iron back into the stand, leave it dirty. Leave as much solder. Some people will actually put solder on the tip of the iron when they're done working so that there's a great big blob on it when they turn the iron off and it cools down. It only really oxidizes bad when it's hot, so it's not that big of a deal. If you just get into the habit of only putting the soldering iron in the stand when it's dirty, and then only cleaning it when you take it out of the stand. So your workflow is going to look a little something like this. You're going to take the iron out of the stand. I'm just going to do 2 of these motors for now. You're going to take the iron out of the stand, and then you're immediately going to clean it. Put your brass steel wool cleaner right next to it. I actually have mine double-sided taped down so I can just jam it in. So your order of operations is soldering iron out, clean it, do the work, back into the stand, put it away dirty. Cool? That's another, like, kind of important one. So for me, it's the sound. Out of the stand makes a sound, clean it, and then do the work. And so now I've cleaned the tip of this soldering iron. It's starting to oxidize. It is oxidizing right now. So if I'm sitting here and I'm talking to you and blah, 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 and 30 seconds goes by, this isn't going to transfer heat worth a damn. Get it back over there and clean it again. So that you take it off the cleaner and you come right in to the work. I didn't separate these. Now they're all on top of each other. Do as I say, not as I do. So you see how there's still smoke coming off of this? We're good. We still have flux on there. It's still nice and clean. And I can tell because the tips of these are tinned. They're all nice and shiny. They're not dull. When the flux runs out, your solder joint will be very dull. If you have a dull solder joint that you want to make shiny again, sometimes you can just add flux to it. Sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes you have to add more solder. But every once in a while, you'll be able to just put a little blob of the flux paste onto a joint and then heat it up and it'll go shiny. Don't do that though. As long if the joint is smooth and rounded and it's not all craggy and awful looking, but it's cloudy, just leave it alone. At some point, you're going to have to rework it, and that's when you can get it to be shiny again. We don't want to put heat into these PCBs unless we absolutely have to. And so, I know your friends will make fun of you for having dull joints, but it's okay. Tell them Ciotti told you not to, because you don't want to dump more heat and abuse into those pads, right? Because the pads are just glued on. You don't want to soften that glue up. None of your friends will know that those pads are glued on. So, you'll be able to teach them something. There we go. 2 motors are done. The wires are protected. And they're tinned. So let's move on to the to some pads here. So This is an AIO with the pockets on the side. We're not going to work on this one yet. We're going to go to... let me pull this apart. I'm going to try to get caught up on chat. I'm going to pull this thing apart, and we'll use this AIO, because this one has nice big pads, so you'll actually be able to see what the hell I'm doing. Let me turn off the soldering iron. Try your best to remember to do that. It is bad for the tip of the soldering iron to sit there and run all night long. It's one of my least favorite things is when I leave it on all night. But man, it happens far more often than it should. Hang on. What temperature should you set your iron to? It depends. It depends on how fast you are getting the work done. It depends on how big the wire is. A bigger wire, or like an ESC, for example, they're going to absorb a lot of heat. With these itty bitty little wires, I leave my iron at 700 Fahrenheit, which is a little hot, but I'm fast. I get in and I get out, and because of that, I can get away with having it up at a higher temperature. I like having it at 700 because that works for big battery wires, even on 5-inch setups, or the small stuff. And so I don't have to constantly turn the soldering iron up and down and up and down and up and down. But yeah, it depends. If you want more time on the pad before you start doing damage, you can run it at a lower temperature, maybe like 650 or even 600 for the small stuff. As you get better, you can crank it up. What you don't want is to be sitting there with the tip of the iron on a pad, waiting. Usually, it's because you've made a mistake. You didn't use flux. You didn't tin the tip of the iron. The tip of the iron is dirty, right? These are the things that usually cause you to have to sit there for 5 or 10 seconds to wait for the heat to transfer. You don't want that. Like when you don't, that is just dumping heat in there. You want to transfer heat quick and then get off so that it can cool down. If you're just sitting there with the iron on the pad, it's going to slowly heat up, and it's going to give time for that heat to go everywhere on that AIO. You don't want that. You want to hit just the pad with heat quick. It'll just put as much heat as possible right there, and it won't have time to spread out. And so you want to get in and get out, just like the rest of your Friday night. Get in, get the job done, and get the hell out of there. You all know what I'm talking about. If you stay for too long, never goes well. Sometimes it ends in tears. You never know. All right, so I'm going to pull this little guy apart, and we're going to direct solder to some of these pads here. Uriel says, do you brush off the rest of the flux? Is it a conduit? I should. You should have when you're done soldering, and there's that flux, when it melts, it leaves this residue. Flux has some acid in it, or flux is acidic, I should say. You should take a toothbrush with some isopropyl alcohol, and you should brush everything down. I don't bother because I break shit so often that it doesn't... That acid over a long period of time will eat into the PCB. And if there's enough of it, and if enough time goes by, it can mess things up. I'm not building these things to last for the next 100 years, right? We crash them all the time. The technology moves forward so fast. If you're building something for NASA to go up into space, yeah, you're going to clean all the flux off. But we're not doing that. And so I don't bother. But I should do that. That is a good practice to get in. It doesn't take very long to do it. I'm just lazy, and I'm trying to get this shit done as quick as possible. I've never had a situation where anything is where the flux is like eaten through a PCB. But If you want to do it the right way, absolutely. Toothbrush, isopropyl, scrub it down. Good to go. Jimmy the Cow says moo. Ailtop says, I used that flux syringe for the first time today, and even with a terrible iron, it makes a huge difference. It does. It's just the paste. The flux paste, you can put a nice blob of it. When you use liquid flux, like in a flux pen, you touch it to the joint and it just flows all over the place. So you only get this little tiny like layer of it. The flux paste is the jam, and being in the syringe is so nice because the tip of the syringe is really little. You can just put it right where you need it. Ailtop says OEMing the motors pretty much. Yeah. ShotX with a 100 CZK super chat. Thank you so much for the support. He says, I got a new Super X, swapped 2G4 on good rig. Flight time was 1 minute. I got core temperature alert 80 C, 160 F, disconnected everything, connected to USB. It went to 60 C, 140 Fahrenheit. CPU was 25. So typically core temperature is the ESC. When you plug any of our stuff into USB, it's not powering up the ESC. So you'll never get like a full-blown core temperature like 80, 90, 100 C warning when you're plugged into USB unless something is like seriously wrong. I'm trying to figure out the sequences of events here. You said you got a new Super X, swapped 2G4 on a good rig. So it sounds like you had a build with a 2G4 AIO. I'm assuming that it blew up, and then you swapped the Super X on. And then your flight time is really short, and you're getting this core temperature alert. So the Super X is a lighter weight AIO with less capacitance. And so it's going to be a little bit more electrically noisy. So if you have a really aggressive PID tune or really aggressive filters, on the 2G4 you can get away with that. On the Super X you can't get away with that. If you don't have a really aggressive filter setup or PIDs, I'll bet that your props or motor shafts are banged up and they're creating a whole bunch of vibrations. And that's what's then creating all the extra heat. When you've got a lot of vibrations, the quad doesn't know the difference between a vibration coming from the motors and prop wash. And so if you've got vibrations coming from the motors or the props, the PID loop tries to fix it. And so when it vibrates one way, the PID loop pushes the motors the other way. When it vibrates the other way, the PID loop pushes the other set of motors the other way. So the PID loop is constantly accelerating and decelerating the motors, and that creates a lot of heat in the ESC, and that's where you can get core temperature alerts. So do what I always show you. Hold the quad in your hand, and it sounds like it's a little tiny whoop. Hold it in your hand, go into turtle mode, and as slowly as you can, spin each motor up individually. You can also do this in the motors tab. At around 30% throttle, you're going to feel the most vibrations possible. I want you to spin each motor up individually. One of those four motor, and you can leave the props on or you can take the props off. One of the four is going to be smooth and not vibrate very much. You want the other three to be as close to that one as possible. If you've got like one or two motors that vibrate hard as hell, or props that vibrate really hard compared to that one clean one, that's your problem. Your motors are banged up. This is pretty common. Your motors are probably banged up. This could be why the 2G4 died. Most problems on Tiny Whoops are from motor shafts that are bent. 1 millimeter motor shafts are not big enough. They're not strong enough. They get bent up very easily, and then problems exactly like what you're dealing with start to happen. So I'm willing to bet that's what's going on. And like I said, that might also be what killed the 2G4. All right, so this AIO here. Thank you again for the support. Sporny says, the trick is to keep your loose nails and glue them on to a set of tweezers. Mr. Clean says Pyrodrome has the Caillou frames in stock. Do they have the Caillou Mini in stock? DCD, thank you again for the support as well. Making sure I'm caught up on chat here. I think I am. Jimmy the Cow says moo. Spilled his orange chicken from Panda Express on his leg, took a shower, still eating the food. Euro says, what's the name of the spider with the red belly? Oh god, I don't know spiders, they're creepy. L-Top says, I'm still watching, so I guess the rule to get in and get out doesn't apply. Even at 3 a.m. Euro says, something for NASA, most likely satellites with a vibration problem. Nice story. Shotak says, so the rig is good. It didn't blow up. Which rig is that? Frank Nicholas says, I thought core temperature is the CPU core of the flight controller, not related to the ESC. Does ESC even report any core temp? I thought it was the, I could totally be wrong, but I thought it was the CPU on the ESC. That's what I thought the core temperature warnings were. Because when we have separate ESCs and separate flight controllers, right, we still get core temperature warnings. If we've got a separate ESC and we've got motors that are oscillating, we'll get a core temperature warning. The flight controller in that case is not getting hot, right? The flight controller doesn't care that the motors are oscillating. So yeah, I think it's I'm pretty sure it's the processor on the ESC has a thermocouple, I guess it would be called, a thermometer of some sort on it. And so when the FETs get really hot, they dump all that heat into the ESC itself. And so like on an AIO, right? Like sure, but yeah, we still get those core temperature warnings on when we have a separate ESC and flight controller. I could totally be wrong though, but I don't think I am, because otherwise, like I said, we wouldn't get those core temp warnings on a separate flight controller ESC setup. All right, so here's another tip. I think we're already at 10, but the Omnifixo, this thing is awesome. It's a little expensive. There is a clone on AliExpress. Don't get the helping hands with the big-ass long arms. Get helping hands that have a ball and socket set up. This little ball and socket, it stays where you put it. It doesn't recoil. The ones with the stupid gorilla arm things, you push them in one way, and when you release, it comes springing back, so you can never get anything in the exact right spot. A part of this tip is move the work to you. Don't move yourself around the work. So what I love about the Omnifixo is it's small and it's lightweight. And so if it makes sense for it to be like this, it's easy. If it's not right, I can move it like that. Thermistor. That's it. Thank you. So, all right, just hang on one second. So let me just think about what motors I want to be on this build. Right now, I just tinned and stripped 802 25,000s. 802 25,000s are not the motors that I want on this build. But that's okay. This is the heavy camera and canopy. I have two of these with heavy goober canopies and heavy cameras. I want those to have the most powerful motors, and so that's going to be these 1102s. That's totally fine over there. And then these are the 25,000 kV motors, so these are the more powerful motors. No, they're not. This isn't the AIO that I want to be working on. Hold on. These are 27,000, aren't they? No, these are 19. Didn't I have a set of 27s? Yeah, here's a set of 27s. This camera is direct soldered. So this is not the AIO that I want this with. This AIO goes with the motors that were actually already on it. All right, so that goes back there. I took that apart for no reason. This is the one. This has got the pads, and then we're going to put these 25,000 kV motors on it. Yes. Yeah. This is the one. All right, so pads. are where you're going to use your flux. And so get your work into a good position. I'm going to be working on these pads here, so I want them facing my strong hand. So I'm going to rotate this like this. So now they're off to this side. I can bring solder in from the left, and I can bring the tip of the soldering iron in from the right. I'm going to pull this little grommet so I don't melt it. And so we've got 6 pads here to solder these motors up to. What I'm going to do is put a nice little blob of flux on each one of these pads, because what I'm going to do is tin these pads. So I'm going to add a blob of solder to these pads. I've already added a blob of solder to the wires, and so then I can just tack them together. Cool? Blob of flux on each one of the pads. And now I'm going to take my solder and I'm just going to bring it in at a 45-degree angle while I'm heating up the pad with the tip of the soldering iron. I've turned the soldering iron off and I forgot to turn it back on. So let's give that a second. While I'm waiting, I'll strip one more of these. Kind of pissed that I just noticed that these are actually gold-plated, these little JSTs. But they're so small that it doesn't really make a difference. They're just junk. Don't want them. Another tip is to kind of batch this work out. I've got 6 pads that are next to each other, so I'm going to tin all 6 of these at once, and then I'll go to the other side. And so try to batch this stuff out. It's going to you're both going to work quicker, but it's also going to dump as little heat into the board as possible. You don't want to heat the board up, cool it down, heat it up, cool it down, heat it up, cool it down. You also don't want to overheat it, but yeah. Because again, every time you heat it up and cool it down, that glue below the pads is going to go gooey and then solidify, and then gooey and solidify and gooey. And so every time you put temperature into it, it's hurting it a little bit. There we go. All right, so that motor's ready to go, but we're not ready for it yet. So here we go. Out of the stand, clean it. And here we go. So we're going to put the tip of the iron on the pad. It's going to hit the flux, and you're going to get a big old burst of smoke. That's a good thing. And then we're going to put the solder in there. Make sure that you tin the whole pad. The tip of the soldering iron is going to pick up a blob of solder. And so you're going to start to hit these pads, and it's going to transfer a little bit of solder. Just add a little bit more. And so you want the pads to have a nice little mound of solder on them, so that now all you got to do is, where's the USB port on this? Back there. So I think it's what, red, black. Now all you have to do is connect the 2 of them. Keep your fine-tipped tweezers handy. These are another really important thing to have on hand. Keep those handy in case you need them. I like to do the first one by hand, and then I'll usually use the tweezers for the rest. And so move the work to you. Keep the motor facing the correct direction. Doesn't really matter, but it's just kind of nice. And just take a second. Take a second to figure out how you can hold this motor in a way that you can hold the wire nice and steady. Okay, my wrist is down on the table so that I have good bone support. Maybe I want to do it like this. Let's try rotating it around, see how this is. Yeah, that's a little better. Right, hold the motor in like a different way in your hand. Just move things around before you bring the tip of the soldering iron in. You want to have this ready to go so that you bring the soldering iron in, you heat it up, you get it out. That's it. Don't be sitting here with the soldering iron Oxidizing. Maybe flip my fingers around. Yeah, even better. There we go. Even better. And now what I'm doing is I'm putting these fingers down to give even more bone support. And you can tell, like, are you shaking or are you not shaking? If you're shaking, change it. See what you can do to not shake. Soldering iron comes out of the stand, straight into the cleaner. And now here we go. Get it where it needs to be. Transfer the heat and move on. And now we want the silicone insulation to butt right up against the pad. I'll show you that in a second. You want it to hang off the side, but you want it butted up against it. See if this will focus. Well, let's try this little trick. There you go. All right, so it's hard to show you, but here's what you want. This is going to be the last tip, because that's pretty much everything. Tinning wires, putting them down on pads, using flux. Right, these are all the things. We'll get caught up on chat, and then we'll all go enjoy the rest of our Friday nights. So you've got your board. You've got your board with a pad on it. Pretend this little square is the pad. All right. You got your wire. My thumb is going to be the silicone insulation. And then these are the individual strands of wire. Cool? What you want is for the wires to be flat on the pad, right? Because you don't want the wires to peel the pad off. You don't want the wires sitting up here. You want them as flat as possible on the pad. And then you want the silicone. How can I show you my thumb? Where's my thumb? Here's my thumb. You want the silicone to butt up against the board. What you don't want, and what a lot of people do, is they leave it hanging off. And when you leave it hanging off like this, the wire, the individual strands of wire here, my fingers, they bend right between the board and the silicone, and they break very easily. If you butt the silicone up against the board, when this wire bends, the whole wire bends. The silicone insulation keeps the wire from kinking, basically. When you've got that gap with the individual strands of wire, it's going to kink, and it's going to bend in that one same spot. And one wire is going to break, and then the second's going to break. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you're done. You have to get that silicone butted up against the pad. Here's the problem. Here's the hard part. It's hard to see when this happens, but what's going to happen is you're going to push the wire up too far. And now you got this gap, and now you've got the wire set up to peel that pad off. So this is where you need to check your work. When you're done doing this, a little 5x loop like this, or at the very least the 3.5x head-mounted magnifier, you're going to take this and you're going to look at it from side on. And when you look at it from the side, you're going to be able to see that silicone, if it's butted up against the board, or if it's backed off, or if it's too far. It's almost worse for it to be too far. And that third one that I did is too far. The first two are fine. The third one needs to get reworked. Yep. I knew it when I reworked it because that happened, and then I thought it might have happened again. Unless there's a little pocket on the bottom. Am I not seeing a little pocket? Oh no, I'm actually fine. Maybe. When in doubt, just redo it. Certainly looks like it's not quite right from the top. It's weird. It looks like it's fine from the bottom. I'm going to redo that one. That's going to make that a lot stronger. The other thing you can do to help with that, because direct soldered motors, I find they break. Even when I butt the silicone up properly, they do break at that point. If you put a blob of E6000 around there, you've got a joint where the individual wires are hanging out. It's going to be the weak spot. It's going to be where it bends and bends and bends and bends and bends. When you crash into stuff, the frame bends. It puts, it puts energy into that. It's going to break there. So if you take E6000 and put a bead of E6000 up on the joint and then wrap the E6000 around the wires, that's going to help out quite a bit, because that's where they break. They'll break exactly right here at that connection point. And so if you're really serious about it being durable, put a blob of E6000. The pain in the ass about doing that is that eventually when you have to, if you want to change motors, it's going to suck to peel that E6000 off, especially if like you wrap it around the wires. I don't do it. I make sure that I get the wires butted up really close, and that's durable enough. Someday it'll fail and I'll redo it. It's just a tiny whoop, whatever. It's not carrying a $400 GoPro around or anything like that. But yeah, if you're having problems with that and you want the ultimate in durability, you can run a little bead of E6000 around that. It'll make it super strong. There you go, friends. There's probably 12 or 13 soldering tips that'll help you out quite a bit. Don't be afraid of soldering. You'll get the hang of it. Keep it basic. Use flux. Use decent solder. MG Chemicals. Mississippi, Georgia Chemicals. That's not what they're actually stands for, but MG Chemicals makes great solder. They make great wick. They make great sort of everything. Don't get bogged down in the thickness of the solder or 60-40 versus 63-37 or whatever the hell it is. Just get MG Chemical solder. 63-37 is slightly better. If you get 60-40 though, it's not the end of the world. I think I ran an entire spool over like 8 years, I guess, of 60-40. It was fine, and then I switched to 63-37, and it's like I don't notice it being any better. But yeah, MG Chemical solder for sure. The flux paste, I don't know. This is like some weird name, no name brand, and it's totally fine. Use flux. Clean the soldering iron when you pull it out of the stand, not when you're putting it into the stand. Bone support so that you're not shaking. Cold solder joints happen when you're shaking and it's cooling. You put all that heat into it, the solder goes from a solid into a liquid. When you remove the heat, you got to stay still. Don't blow on it, just stay still and relax. If you have good bone support, you won't be shaking all over the place. If you're shaking all over the place when that solder is cooling down, going from a liquid back to a solid, it's going to have cracks all over the place, and that's called a cold solder joint, and that will fail. So just calm the hell down, get good bone support. If you're holding the wire and you're shaking all over the place, stop. Do something to calm down. Get better bone support, hold it differently. A lot of times that'll happen when you're like, move the work to you, rotate the work around, put it in a different position, put a book under your hand, put your phone under your wrist, do something. You have to be able to hold that shit still before you pull the heat in, because when you pull the heat away, you have to be holding it still. So if you can't hold it without shaking before you get the heat in there, don't even bring the heat in. Move things around, play around. Some people like to do the work on the front so that they're like feeding stuff in like this. Some people like it towards them. It doesn't matter, whatever works for you. However you can hold it in there in the exact right position without shaking all over the place, that's all that matters. Cool? Fractically says, looks like there's a separate temperature warning for ESC TTTT, and can be reported for individual ESCs. Oh, that's cool. Euro says, did you test Happy Model X14? I did. I got to fly it some more. I have the X14 2S build that we did here on the 1.8 inch props. Yeah, I had problems with the camera, but I just got the camera fixed up. So I got to get this thing back outside and see how the 1.8-inch props are on 2S. Frank also says, I suspect the FETs, FC, MCU, ESC, MCU, etc. on the AIO same board causes the FC core temperature to rise more quickly. Yeah, that makes sense. Frank says, found the blade of flight issue patch that added core temp 2018. Definitely the flight controller. There we go. He dropped a GitHub link. Thank you, dude. Euro says Spider's name is a Black Widow. There you go. DCDK with a 20 dicks. He sent me 20 dicks. Thank you, brother. That's a Jimmy Broadbent joke. Jimmy Broadbent is a sim racing streamer that's hysterical. And whenever he gets super chats with, I think they're Dutch kroners, he calls them dicks. Thank you, DCD. I appreciate it, man. Thank you all for hanging out. I'll be back on Sunday at 3 o'clock Eastern time. I hope you learned something. I hope you solder a little bit better. I'm going to do hours and hours and hours of work on these newbie drone rigs to get a couple of builds that I can put up on the Etsy store. CiottiFPV.com is where you go to support me so that we can keep learning together better, building better, I should say. Yeah, hanging out. Talking other stuff too. Men's mental health. Always feel free to ask questions about mental health shit. I've been doing talk therapy for the better part of like 15 to 20 years on and off. You know, it's scary stuff with men in the world right now, and you know, we can talk about it. I've got a FPV therapy Facebook group, actually, as well as a text channel on my Discord. You can join the Discord for free and get access to half of the Discord text channels. The FPV therapy is one of the free ones. We're always hanging out over there on General Nonsense until they start to require us to take pictures of our driver's licenses, at which point I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think I'm willing to upload a picture of my driver's license to Discord, so I don't know. We'll see what happens. Thanks for hanging, friends. I'll see you Sunday at 3. Support me over at CiottiFPV.com. We'll keep hanging out forever. Later, friends. I'm not ready. Here's more of that 1.6-inch prop 2S build with a different camera. Later.
Yeah. Out in the yard where the grass grows wild, CiottiFPV's goggles locked, grinning like a child. Teddy spaghetti's, fur flies, and jet wash dreams. Yeah. Chasing small whoops like a dog possessed fiend. Eyes on a neon blur, hard in the chase. Big fuzz and prop spin, all tangled in place. Yeah. Four-legged rebel with a rotor stir tail in the circus of the sky. They never fail. CiottiFPV, Teddy Spaghetti, dynamic duo kings, barking at the breeze, throttling at top speed. They zooming through hoops, flipping in style. That schnauzer's got throttle and a toothy smile. Yeah. Shotties on sticks, Teddy's on paws. Side by side, legends breaking all the laws. Through the kitchen, over couch scale terrain. Backyard mayhem in their flight domain. No ground too sacred, no loop too tight. Fuzz, fuel, fury ignites the night. When pilot and pup lock eyes on the prize, every whoop they conquer is a fresh cut surprise. Yeah. Shotty behind the sticks, Teddy's leading the pack. Prop guard missiles unleashed, never looking back. No leash, no map, just freestyle mic. They on the dog drone streets every day and night. Said whoops, hitting low, gotta nail the dive. Teddy push throttle up, feel the beast come alive. I see the neon arc got the sticks locked in, Teddy.
Yeah, let's rip this loop, ride the roar of the wind, Teddy. Yep, yeah. CiottiFPV, Teddy's spaghetti, diamond and duo kings, barking at the breeze, crawling at top speed, zooming through hoops, flipping in style. That schnauzer's got throttle and a toothy smile. Teddy's spaghetti, Teddy and duo kings, barking at the breeze, rocking at top speed things, zooming through hoops, flipping in style. That schnauzer's got throttle and a toothy smile. Yeah, when you hear that bar cut the rotor hum, you know Ciotti and Teddy's mission's just begun. FPV's fur-faced legends, legends singing loud.